Look at those heels you got on.
Those are some skills.
I want to say thank you so much to Pastor Faith for you
Go
coming out doing what
CC.
you
Go
do.
CC.
I got high expectations for you, young lady, and there's a lot of ladies that are counting on you. You ain't even met yet. All right?
That's great. That's great.
There you go.
Welcome to Black and Blue with AK and Officer Jai. I am AK Kamara.
I'm Jai Hansen.
How you doing, man?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing well, doing well. That was an interesting open for everyone that's been tuning in. We have a really great guest lined up today. You know, this podcast is really about talking on a personal note with public figures that have been maligned in the public, right? Whether that's media, whether that's social media, whether that's other political parties. And today's guest fits that description perfect. Why? Because she was brave enough to step up and run in a district that I believe was plus like 30, something like that. Democrats have really held on to the 5th Congressional District for a long time, but Cicely Davis has raised her hand and said, I'm going to take on the behemoth known as Ilhan Omar, and she's been running a fantastic campaign. And so welcome to the show, Cicely. How are you?
I am doing well.
That
Thank you for having me. It's great to be back.
So tell us a little bit about that video. You know, you started doing some jump rope. Did you grow up? What's it called? Skipping rope, jumping rope?
That's the double dutch.
The double dutch.
Double the ropes.
And you did
we
it
do
in
double
heels.
time in heels. I was unprepared for the double dutch. I didn't know. So, but when they started turning the ropes, it brought me back to my childhood.
Yeah.
And, at the end of the day, there's always that core black girl that's inside, you
Yeah.
know, and some things it's just like getting on a bike, getting on the roller skates and jumping double dutch all day, popsicles and jelly shoes and hide and go seek and all that. So it felt really good. They had the good music on in the background. That felt right.
That was a campaign event, I'm assuming?
It was.
Okay, so you're actually having fun out there, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, how long have you been going? I've seen you at campaign events, and you just steal the room.
Thank you.
You really do.
It's been 17 months, and it's down to 7 days now, and it's kind of surreal. This is definitely a two-sided pancake, right? In that it's 7 days, and it's like 7 days, let's go, I'm ready, I'm feeling confident. And then the other side is 7 days, I need more time. I need to connect with more people and do more interviews or one more event. So it's surreal, bittersweet.
Yeah, when you're doing things like, jumping rope, I know that there's been critics that will often go to a very overused line that comes from really the hardcore Democrats, that somehow if you're a Republican and you happen to be a highly melanated person, that you are not a real black person, right? That's something that I've experienced, and I just think that this is such a preposterous statement that somehow your political beliefs, decrease the amount of blackness that you have, right? You were born black, right?
Born black, two black parents.
Every day you wake up and, you're still a black woman. It's just that you don't believe what the Democrats believe. And so I just think it's one of these things that's cool to me. It's like, yeah, you know how to double dutch, which is something that traditionally a lot of young black girls grew up doing, right? I mean, white kids jump rope too, but not as good as
We got to double
girls.
up. Right.
I wanted to ask, you grew up in, you didn't grow up in Minnesota, but, what was your experience like? Did you have, I guess, I'm just going to cut straight to the chase. Did you have a traditional black upbringing?
I did, which is why there's such fervor and passion for running in this district, particularly my focus on Minneapolis, in that black girl jumping that double dutch, and I see kids that look like me, and they're doing what I do, and I'm watching as I'm lit dropping. They're out there, they're playing hide go seek, and they're arguing about who has the longest rope or who jumped the longest. There's hopscotch still on the ground, and so I identify with that. I identify with kids who have neighbors yelling at them because both their parents know each other, and the dads are sitting in the house playing cards and sending kids to the corner store. That I all identify with because that was my upbringing. It was very traditional, it was very black, and it was wonderful. But I want to maintain those traditions, and I think that it contributes to strong, responsible people, but it enriches and it nourishes our society. That Black experience, if we're going to go ahead and do the race thing, is definitely a needed additive, and it's definitely a contributor to American society, and definitely a contributor to pop culture.
Yeah.
So that's something I want to nurture, multiply, and raise it, and just make sure that I nurture it as much as possible.
That aspect is what truly drives this conversation. Mm-hmm. There's this caricature of what the Black family is like, right? Mm-hmm. So when I asked you, it was kind of loaded of like, did you have a traditional Black upbringing? There's going to be a lot of what I call like guilty white liberals that will say, well, so many Black people grow up without a father in the house. And statistically, we know what those look like. But the idea that you can't have a strong family, regardless of race, but that the idea of having a strong Black traditional family is lost is preposterous, because we know that the economic things that are tied to that are important. So to be able to be proud of that, to be able to embrace that and say, mm-hmm. we need to do something different to bring that back, because these policies that are being pushed by the likes of your opponent have completely destroyed and further denigrated what a strong Black family looks like. And that's just the truth, And so I think it's always cool to have someone like yourself that can represent that and speak so clear about what that is. And let's be honest, there's other people within your district that aren't Black, right? It's a very a very multifaceted district. So you're not just there to represent just Black Americans in the 5th Congressional District.
Well, there's a lot of white liberals you're going to be representing too, right?
Yeah.
So
63.3% to be exact. So Blacks only make up 9% of the district.
Yep.
Right.
So how do you bring that together? How are you a representative for all of CD5?
Yeah, so it's just literally about being connective, being available, being someone who's approachable, being someone who's honest and genuine, jumping double dutch, and but then also being engaged and, just that person that says hello to you in the grocery store, and we're trick-or-treating, and we see you at the bar, and we can have a beer, and we can all join together and shout for the Vikings, right?
Yeah.
And stand next to each other in the ticket line for the Twins. This is just all about human experience. It's not about, as you said, AK, about melanin, but recognizing within that we have cultural differences that really make up, in my opinion, it's not my opinion. It's not an opinion. It's actually fact that CD5 is the most diverse district in Minnesota. So that's what makes us unique. That's what makes us the standout. I'm proud to be from it. And I believe I'm up against someone who doesn't really share in the values and actually wants to tear down or tear away from those traditions and that diversity. I want to keep it. I want to keep it. I want to fight for it, and I want to allow CD5 to really impact the rest of Minnesota. We have that potential, but we haven't been able to do that because of poor representation.
Yeah. All right. Let's dive into a little bit. I want to know the thought process of how you came to deciding to run with your family, taking on this huge. Omar, having this district. Tell me a little bit about your process in deciding to run and what made you jump in. You're not a politician, right? This is a whole new arena for you.
Right. So I, as I said, I grew up in the Black monolith, and I actually spent time on the team that opposed Ilhan last time. I was chair of my Senate district, so I was involved. I was a grassroots supporter, so I was involved supporting local candidates on the conservative side, of course. I was also the state director for Blexit, Minnesota, and just recognized that once the 2020 election cycle was over, really kind of running this political analysis, or more so like an autopsy of what happened to us, and just thought about what it really take to gain a win in a district that has been voting one way since 1963. And I said, you know what? Here we are after George Floyd, after all of the unrest, and all that we've been through with Russia collusion and things like that, and said that we are in the heart of identity politics. How do we neutralize that so we can get back to, one, political civility, but to actually run an issues-based contest in politics here in Minnesota 5. So I said, okay, she's a woman, I'm a woman. She's of color, I'm of color. You know what? I think I can combat her on those issues, kind of neutralize those issues by way of identity politics, and just make this a girl fight, right?
Yeah.
Where you can't claim sexism, you can't claim racism. I suppose you could try to pull out Islamophobia, but that leaves her with a few very little darts to throw at me, to where she'll have to actually just fight against me by way of the issues. And so I think that's what people are actually hungry for. I have unfortunately been unable and unsuccessful to pull her out for debate, but that's what the people are hungry for. I think there has been political paralysis in CD5. There has been political complacency by way of leadership, and the people are actually going to have to decide to step up in this district and fight alongside with me to change the perspective and to change the participation and the expectation by way of political leaders in this district. So it isn't just me running against Ilhan. It's actually the people having to step up to say, you know what? We thought we wanted this. We didn't get what we wanted. We're actually going to have to step up and decide how we want our district defined. And for those who have let us down, who haven't stepped up, who don't debate, who don't show up for events, who aren't available, remind them that we the people put you in, and we the people can take you out.
Yeah, I think when you give this overview that you're taking away these darts and barbs to bring the conversation to, here's what I believe in, here's what you believe in, let's let the actual constituents say which vision do they want. I think that that's smart. The question is, has Ilhan ignored you, right? Like, is her strategy been just pretend that you don't exist, go out and say, here's all the things that I want to do? Or has she taken the approach of attacking your policy positions? What has that been like for you?
She hasn't attacked. She has attacked indirectly by attacking the party.
Sure.
She has ignored me. That's a political. It seems like a strategy that she used in her last run as well.
Sure.
If I don't show, then I can't lose.
Sure.
Right? If I don't show, then I can't reveal or disclose. And so I'm going to speak at party. Right? I'm going to attack Trump. I'm going to attack Republicans in general. But what my personal stance is, or taking responsibility, or even sharing, talking about her successes, by all means, show up and tell the constituents what your successes are. Give them at least that. We haven't been able to get that out of her either.
Now, I'm curious, based off of that, because that's my impression. 'Cause, you know, I pay enough attention. I don't live in the Fifth, but are you hearing from constituents that they're frustrated with the lack of presence? Because that's really what it comes down to for Ilhan. Like, she had her little flashes here and there, but she's been pretty absent. You know, she might come out and say a few things here or there, but she's really kept her head down, it seems like. But are you hearing anything like frustration from constituents when you're talking to them that she's just not responsive?
Yes, the fact that she's not accessible, the fact that she hasn't shown up, it seems to them as if the town halls that have been run are at the bare minimum, you know, with fleeting appearances, very one-dimensional in conversation, kind of a let me do the bare minimum just to keep you quiet. This is really about operationally, I believe squad members are interested in squad members. This is about political celebrity. It's about getting the next Netflix deal. It's about writing the next book. It's about showing up on the cover of GQ magazine. It has nothing to do with the wants or needs of the constituents. The people are becoming more aware and less accepting of political celebrity.
Yeah.
They want a voice in D.C., and they want someone who's going to provide real solutions to real issues, particularly Black people in CD5. They're tired of the unrest. They're tired of the complaints. They're sick and tired of being sick and tired. And it's finally starting to turn around. And so for those who say that I vote liberal because I care about Black people, well, I'm telling you what to do is to join Black people in the vote to vote for me, simply because this is about solutions. Vote the way Black people are voting, and they're coming my way. My DMs are full every day of people telling me, both Black, white, and the other, I I had always voted liberal. I'd always vote Democrat. I'm voting Republican for the first time because
Wow.
it is time for this district to see real change, to be redefined, to undefine and unhook from the identity that we have attached to us from 2020, and to start holding leaders accountable. Enough is enough, and it's been wonderful.
Yeah, Cicely, let's talk a little bit about the solutions. You keep on bringing up these solutions. What are some of the points that you want to get across to people that are listening right now? I mean, again, you have a heavy liberal population in CD5.
Yeah.
You're going to have to work with them, work across that aisle. What does that look like for you?
So again, I think that what I want to do is erase the R and the D. Crime, cost of living, and education are not partisan issues. So within those, there are solutions. When it comes to crime, the simple fact is that if I'm in trouble, if I'm pressed, and if I feel unsafe, I need to be able to pick up the phone and call for help and to have that help arrive in a reasonable amount of time. Because when I'm in trouble or I'm unsafe, seconds matter. So we want to replenish the MPD. We have to replenish the police force. I think that something I really want to do is to bring back the beat cop. And this is something that is not unreachable. When I grew up jumping double dutch in the streets, Officer Bob and there's another one, his name was Huggy. But these were local cops who were friends of the family. They were deacons in the church, but they walked the streets and they stopped crime before they happened. Because it would be something like, hey, Paul, don't go in there. We just had that issue yesterday. I just told you this yesterday. If you do it again, I'm going to take you down. They would be there. They knew the people. They knew the kids. They knew the families. And so that approachability and that deterred a lot of crime. I want to bring that back. If we can replenish the police force, we can also get patrol to actually be on foot instead of just driving through. Because I think if you can get out of your car and you can stand shoulder to shoulder and have conversation, that's another deterrent to crime. So public safety looking like very, very human, and that we also get to remember as citizens that we participate in public safety, but they're just people in black and blue. They want to go home at the end of the day, but at the end, we want everyone to be safe. So
how do you increase those numbers? I mean, you touched on Minneapolis, but I mean, it's all, metro-wide as well.
Yep.
What does that, for you, what do you think we need to do to get more people interested in public safety, more people supporting law enforcement, more people wanting to actually sign up to do this job?
Yeah.
I know personally you got the MPPOA endorsement very fast. I think it was probably one of the first ones.
It was.
And rightfully so. So congratulations on that. But talk a little. I mean, coming from public safety, I'm interested in this. Growing up in Minneapolis, I'm interested in this. I think we all would like to have the numbers where we can have officers that are out in the community. That's just not feasible right now, though. So what can you do on a federal level to bring more officers into our communities?
Right. So we're keeping in mind that Congress is the purse string. They were defunded to the tune of over $1 million. So let's get that funding back so we can actually afford to replenish and get those bodies back on the police force. I think that the marketing, we have other states out there that are doing some very creative marketing and getting police officers back.
Florida.
Let's do it. Why not? I mean, I think it's just, this is an opportunity. Just like people took advantage of COVID and reinventing themselves, we can reinvent marketing. And we can do things to make sure that people understand what's entailed in being a police officer, that it's more than just, pulling out guns and pulling triggers. I think if they're accessible, let's get police officers to show up at church. What's wrong with the show and tell for adults at church? Showing up at jobs and things like that. Reaching out, going back to school, ride-alongs. There's so many things that we can do to get young people interested, and those who've even maybe served time, re-engage to actually want to serve. There's a lot that we can do. And so it's just a time to remember the blue genie in Vegas for cars. There's opportunity there. We have some creative people here in Minnesota. We have creative people in police force. There are a lot of creative ways that we can attract people to want to serve. They do a lot of great things. We need the MPD in particular to talk about the good things that they're doing so that people see the other side and want to contribute and hear about the good that's going on.
When you think about the job and the role that a congressman or woman is supposed to have, yes, they go to the federal, go to D.C. and they represent the federal interests, Minnesota's interests in the federal government. But there's a lot of leadership that you can do, right? You can you should be a broker in the community because you do have the federal interests. Mm-hmm. Are there organizations that you've been able to reach out to that have been open to talking more to you in regards to bringing jobs to the district? Obviously, your district is very large, and there's a lot of different groups of people, a lot of different cultures. Mm-hmm. But have you been able to do any of that? And then if yes or no, have you had help from the MNGOP or the Republican Party to try and broker some of those? I kind of want to get in that conversation of what the help looks like from the MNGOP, but yeah.
Yeah. So there are nonprofits. There are people who have actually served time or have family members who've served time that are attorneys and things like that. They're looking for a way, and I think the MPD is actually doing this. They're actually approaching businesses to help pay half for school for what is the law enforcement?
Just for skills
for skills. Yep. And so they're willing to pay half the tuition to incentivize businesses and to incentivize young people to go for the police force. And so I think this is amazing. And so we have nonprofits that actually want to help out and do that, help pay the other half. So this is part of that marketing, but this is also a part of those solutions and getting people more interested in becoming a part of the police force. Mm-hmm. The Minnesota GOP has definitely been there in support. I think that, let's keep in mind, however.
See, now you're smiling, so you're picking your words carefully
here. I am picking my words because
I'm not trying to make you put anyone on blast.
But I'm going to speak to it because I do believe that definitely 3, 4, and 5, definitely 4 and 5 has been ignored. The political experts consider 5 unwinnable because
it's a throwaway district, right?
Yeah. Yes. Again, that monolith since 1963. We're just simply going to go for what we feel it's winnable because we get to kind of put a check mark in our winning column versus a loss, and so I have a hard time with that because CD5 has a lot of really great conservatives. But CD5 also has a lot of really great Democrats and independents and even people who do not like me or they don't identify politically with me. They're people. And so I have a hard time overlooking anyone and deciding that one district is not winnable or worth the time, effort, or treasure versus another. So you just simply don't step up to run, to lead. And decide.
Just your group, right?
Yeah, just your group.
You have a large constituency, and you want to represent everyone.
Everybody matters.
So I'm not trying to make a dig or anything like that, but
no.
I fundamentally and truly believe that conservatism actually improves people's lives, especially people that grew up like me. Mm-hmm. I grew up poor. I was in kind of like a half-broken family. My father and mom got divorced. They then got remarried. My dad was addicted to crack. Mom lost her job, a good-paying job. We lived in low-income subsidized housing, the whole 9 yards. My mom and dad got back together. Then my dad sold drugs again and went back to prison. So I grew up like that, and I say that conservatism can actually save people's lives. And I'm not trying to knock what liberal beliefs are, but my biggest issue has been that within communities of color, that message just doesn't really exist. Like, there's no one out there really talking about the values of conservatism. And I'm not saying that that's your mantle to hold up.
No.
But that's been my
Right.
biggest frustration with the MNGOP is that they're looking at shaving points and things like that. And I get the Karl Roves and whatever, that are trying to strategize this stuff. But I fundamentally believe that these messages of conservatism, of honestly being independent, knowing that your value and your worth makes people's lives better. It can save people that are on this downward trajectory. And so to that point, how do you feel about the messaging? You did work with Blexit, which obviously is important because you're pulling people away from, kind of from the Democrat Party in a sense, saying just take a look around and give us a chance. Is your sense that people are open to that message in the communities that you've been out in?
They are so open. I'm telling you, I'm gonna have you mark my words. It's going to be black people to reshape the Republican Party in the United States of America.
I agree.
They're recognizing, they're lining up, and they recognize literally, AK, to what you just spoke about, is that this is not only do we already have these core values, but my life is better. What happened to me when I became a conservative is I lost all that anger, that chip on my shoulder, looking for a reason to hate history, looking for a reason to hate, looking for fault in systems, looking for fault in people, and just trying to figure out a way that I can continue to self-determine, to continue to self-better, and how I can actually then take all that and then make life better for myself, my family, and others.
So when was that for you?
Yeah, that happened when I started volunteering at the St. Cloud VA. And I spent time with veterans, the most selfless citizens in the United States, people who would literally give up their lives for an entire country of people who don't even know who they are, right? Because they so love the notion of American exceptionalism. They so love that flag. They so love the distinct right to self-determine and the concept and the working document of the Constitution and what it ratifies for all of us. And once I started speaking to them, all of these preconceived notions and the lies that I was told, they started melting away. Wait a minute, all white people aren't rich. White men aren't racist. What? You mean there was a black army and what? Oh yeah, what? It was white people that actually ended slavery. What? Black people were Republicans? What? I mean, and so what happened was I became angry, and then I started becoming an adult, and I started reaching and reading and researching and kind of pulling back the curtain and start looking beyond headlines to do some real research and learning on my own. And I'm telling you, conservatism is best for Americans. I really, truly believe that to my core.
Yep.
And this is what's happening in the black community. They're recognizing that now as well.
The thing that I find most fascinating is that if someone's a liberal, they might hear this and say, oh, yep, there you go. You're just another conservative that wants to control everyone. But here's the truth. I, as a conservative, have such a wide array of people that I am friends with from every different ideological walk of life, because one of the core tenets of conservatism is being an individual, right? So it's like I have my core set of beliefs, but I understand that not everyone has those same beliefs. And that is, honestly, that's the thing that I try to convey to people, is that they have this caricature of what it means to be a conservative, right? And to conserve values, one of the values that is most paramount to conservatism is individualism. Yes. And I think it's important for people to understand that you're not saying that you want to turn everyone into, Bible holding, you have to be this religion, you have to do this. You're just saying that you want to be able to have people as individuals, self-determination. That's the values that are important to you, that you think also are important to people being able to have their best version of themselves.
That's right. And so, AK, when you embrace that, when you embrace individualism, and when you embrace and take control of your own destiny, government has less control and less say in your life. I don't need government to make a decision for me. I don't need the government to make medical decisions for me. I don't need the government to make financial decisions for me because I'm going to create my own. I don't need the government to teach me how to behave or to provide my set of values. And so that is, for me, that base that keeps me conservative and why I've just found this euphoric happiness. I know it just seems very cornball, but truly understanding the Constitution and what being a conservative really is. When I'm having conversations with Black people about this R versus D thing, and they say, "Why are you conservative? What makes you like to want to be a Republican?" and I explain that, there's silence, or they start thinking like, "Well, who can't get with that?" Being able, you'd listen to rap music, all they're talking about is free market capitalism, owning this, rocking
true.
this.
Yeah.
I mean, think about it. When you actually stop and slow down, bring down the temperature, give up your right to be offended so you can have open ears, and you think about it. Let's take hip hop again. Hip hop is all about self-determination, creating your own, and it's free market capitalism. And so all the basis is there.
And I think having that conversation is just about challenging people's perceptions and their narratives. And again, I think this is important for people to understand, is that because you view the individuality as being important, you're not just trying to convert everyone to conservatism. You just want to let people know that you want to have that type of relationship with people. And so if you're a liberal that you're never going to be conservative, that's fine. Just understand that you're approaching that person as an individual, and I think that's important because you're not cutting people off from having that meaningful relationship. Because here's the thing: what happens when you view people as individuals, you don't write them off because of the group that they identify. Whether you're Hispanic, whether you practice Islam, you don't write anyone off because you view people as individuals that have these cultural traits that are important to them. And I just think that that's important for people to understand, is that you're not the type of person that's going to write someone off because you view them as their beautiful identity of an individual.
Right. You're an individual. You are not a monolith. You're not a voting block. So when I door knock and I lit drop, I'm knocking on an individual's door, hoping to engage an individual. I do not consider the 1963 monolith. I literally am just interested in the person who answered the door. And we have an individual conversation. My message is simply that I see you as an individual. I hope you to see me as an individual. And, there is an opportunity here for us both to work together. But I want you to go into the voting booth knowingly, willingly, and as well informed as you possibly can to vote for what's best for you and for everyone in CD5. That's my message.
What has been the number one issue that you hear when you're out door knocking? First of all, Are you getting people right away saying, "Are you a Republican?" Or are they willing to hear you out talking about the individual aspect of it all?
Yeah. Well, I'm CD5, so what's playing well for me if we're going to go to race is that I'm Black. That's working for me when I'm knocking on the door because it's CD5. But no one's asking me my party. When I approach, and again, it's friendly, it's open, and things like that, I'm hearing crime in Minneapolis. I'm hearing crime in Northeast. Now, CD5 is 15 cities. Outside of that, in the rest of the suburbs, it's cost of living, inflation. So Northeast, all of Minneapolis and Northeast, it's crime. Brooklyn Center as well. But outside of that, it's cost of living. And once we're engaged, those two issues in itself has not lent itself to any partisan conversations. I haven't had, no one's brought up Roe v. Wade to me. And no one's asked me, I had one person ask me, bring up Trump's name, one group. But that wasn't an engaged conversation that took place over 30 minutes. It was the second to last question.
I think that's so powerful because everyone, like the way that the narrative is that everyone in Minnesota is so concerned about reproductive rights. And don't get me wrong, there's people that are concerned about that. But as I have said on this show and to every guest, people care. Are they safe? and can they actually live life? And those are pretty important things. I just want to point out a couple of comments. Thank you to Abby. Abby said she's here for you.
Yeah.
That's why she's here. Abby is an awesome human being. What up, Abby? Also, Joe said, rest in peace to Takeoff. I don't know if you two are big Migos fans, but Takeoff was tragically shot
Today,
in a
right?
back
Was
alley
it
dice game.
in Houston.
Which is insane. I mean, he's a high-level celebrity, so rest in peace to Takeoff. Condolences to both Quavo and Offset, his family members. And this is another question, too, is when we think about accountability, and we have Minnesota Now commenting, when it comes to accountability, what's your viewpoint? Like, let's be very straightforward. You get in, you're in the Republican majority because, let's be honest, you get in, there is going to be a red tsunami flipping this district, so many things. What types of things do you think are important in regards to holding people accountable that have not acted in the best interest of the people?
Yeah. So if you're referring to, are you talking judges and anyone?
Anybody that has done things that have been egregious and terrible.
Let's talk about judges for one, and then also I want to talk about kind of with accountability on the reform side for public safety. So if you could touch on both of those.
Sure. I think that this is a perfect time to remember that it's we the people, for the people, and by the people. So you know what? You get people, if you voted someone in and they are just simply not doing the job, you just have to vote them out. We have had long-running leaders who've been in office decades who have not performed, and they've gotten away with it. We have got to be willing to simply hold people accountable. I'm electing you to do a very specific job. If you fall short, I have the power to take you out, and I will do that. That's not partisan. This is about truly participating in this process in America. That's what I mean, why that's so important. By way of judges and again, these are people who are there to do a job. And so we're seeing widespread criminality. Your job as a judge is to apply the law and hold criminals accountable, give the sentencing that is according to law that is written. Prosecutors are supposed to prosecute according to the law that is written and hold criminals accountable, take them off the street so they don't reoffend, so that people are just simply safe. It's really, really simple. Somehow along the way, this has gotten to become very, very politicized, one, and two, complicated, but it's not. These are written. If you don't like the laws, then by all means, we have a process for that where they can be rewritten. You meet with the proper authorities, you take the appropriate channels, and you get those changed. But when it comes to accountability, each one of us, again, the distinction of being an American is that we have the distinct right to self-determine, and we have to be held accountable for the jobs that we're supposed to do, how we're supposed to perform within those jobs, and the expectation of the public to hold those people accountable. So I'm all about accountability across the board. Social media, judges, prosecutors, police officers, congresspeople, Senate, presidents, the whole nine. The only reason and only way this system works in this, what we call the American experiment, is all based on individualism and accountability. And the people have the right to hold each and every one accountable. It's a beautiful checks and balance system.
What kind of reform would you like to see with public safety, law enforcement?
Yeah. I would like to see, we kind of talked about, police officers being more accessible and being engaged with the community and things like that. I know that the issue of immunity has come up.
Yeah, the qualified immunity.
Qualified immunity. And, I have an issue with that being taken away. Mm-hmm. That being said, I think across the board, if you were to hold police officers accountable, I'd like to see that equally by way of Congress people, right? Congressmen and women, senators, presidents, judges, prosecutors. So I want everyone across the board to be held accountable. I think that when we single out just police officers, it sends a very dangerous message, and that they're more egregious, or they need to be held to a certain standard, but not everyone else. And we're actually seeing that in effect right now with the political celebrity, doing anything they want, getting away with anything, lying, retracting, memory holding things, the whole nine. If we talk about accountability across the board, I want to see accountability literally across the board in all figures, all leadership.
You touched on the political celebrity. There's up right now, the scandals. I mean, it's kind of funny, but it's also true.
Yeah.
I mean, she's had, your opponent has had numerous issues. What are ones that stick out to you that you want to address?
Yeah, so, citizenship is important to me. So the questioning of citizenship for her, whether or not, with this whole marrying of the sibling and things like that, because there's no statute of limitations on with that standard, I want that to come out. I want someone, if that's true, I want her held accountable. But I would want any and everyone held accountable. We have an issue at the border. And so particularly if we're holding, or we want to see that at the border, I certainly want to see that with our leaders, because they're supposed to be the best of us. They're supposed to represent the best of us, and they're supposed to embody and uphold the law. So if we are dealing with someone who's truly not literally a citizen, and yet they're leading, and then spews messages that are anti-American, this is a grave, egregious problem across the board that really needs to be addressed, because it's bleeding into our abbreviated institutions as well. And so that one particularly for me pokes more than anything else. I would also say voting. The cloud or the questions of this Project Veritas and the Ilhan Omar's team in participating with that. We need accountability across the board. Again, I know I sound like a broken record, but those two in particular, I have a real issue with. I would need to be able to have someone sit down with her. I would like to question, but to also use our AG, and anyone else who's supposed to press in on those issues, to have that come aboard, because it's important for future for people who want to run in the future, what the expectation is, and what we're telling our children about the American experiment and what it's like to step up and lead. And if you're receiving a message that if you step up and you can get away with any and everything, where's that integrity, and what kind of people are we turning out for the future to be the leaders of this country? Scary.
Yeah, when you think about the numerous scandals that exist, I always think that there's two things to keep in mind. Number one, Ilhan, up until this last primary, even regardless of all of those scandals, she still has a decent amount of popularity. And so I think it's always important that you are saying, it's not that you think that Ilhan is an individual. You're not trying to impugn her. You're just saying that there's these questions that every constituent should ask, that we should get some answers to. So that's number one. Number two is that there is nobody that's above the law. And just because you're a congresswoman doesn't mean that you get to go and have a different set of laws applied to you. So I think it's important to always keep in mind that you're not attacking her as an individual, just saying that as constituents, people should know these things. Now, recently, a report came out that Ilhan spent around $100,000 on security, private security. This is the same woman that said that police are a cancer on society. So it's just...
Wait, who's paying for that? Who's
right.
paying for that security?
Exactly, right? And so this is what's so curious, is that you can come out with a statement and be so forceful that, yes, law enforcement is a cancer, and it goes into this entire ideology that comes from the squad that views that police are this systemically racist institution that are destroying people of color's lives, which is preposterous. But just think about that hypocrisy. So you get to pay $100,000 for security to keep you safe of people that have guns. I promise you that if she's paying $100,000 for security, they are not armed with rocks and slingshots, okay? They are armed with firearms. But yet the people in the community that she's supposed to serve, she wants law enforcement to be deconstructed and defunded. That's just preposterous. Have you heard anything from any constituents about this new report that came out? I mean, the media does love to cover for her. But.
Yeah, so people are now starting to notice, and this is hypocritical. It's insensitive, it's arrogant, and it's tone deaf, right? And so we need to completely dismantle the Minneapolis Police Department because it's rotten to the root, right? And yet you won't set foot in Minneapolis without security. So imagine the arrogance of that and the message that it sends to the very people you are now asking to vote for you. You go around them with your protected security. So I'm protecting myself against you, and yet I am voting. My anthem is that I want you to vote for me, but I don't believe you should be protected. I don't believe your property should be protected. I don't believe you as an individual should be protected. I don't believe your family should be protected.
Of course, she's important.
Well, she's important
and she's
enough.
A special person. She deserves that extra protection. All of the plebs and the average everyday people, they don't deserve that type of protection. That's what that projects. And I actually think that people like Ilhan Omar view themselves that way. I think she thinks she's special, that she has something that is more important than the average person. Do you view that you're more important or special than any of your constituents?
I do not. And the elitist attitude, right, is part of this political celebrity that I want to break down and get rid of. The simple fact is that Congress people are just representative and voices of the people.
That's all they are.
So I should absolutely be approachable at all times. When I go to church on Sunday, I stay the whole time. Right? I don't just pop in and say my speech and then I'm out of there. I stay, I'm singing the songs and I'm praying and I'm praising the Lord and that whole thing because I'm just one of the people. I just simply want to represent our interests and our voices in D.C. And so I think that the people have to decide that they're changing and upping the standards on what they require out of their leaders. No longer should you accept people who just stop by. Oh, well, I'm busy. Well, you know what? You don't get to be too busy for me if you want my vote.
Yeah.
You just don't. And I understand that there's a demand. It's one person's versus 718,000. Understood. But you can't possibly be busy every single time. You have to be able to figure out a way to pull people together. Got to change the standards, but the people are in control of that.
What do you think about lowering the temperature? There's the reports now out that at the mayor's house, there's people setting up an encampment in front of his house, protesting in front of his house. We have the issue at Nancy Pelosi's house, lowering the temperature. And what do you think about protests going on at elected officials' homes?
So again, loving the Constitution, our right to assemble is absolutely protected. I find it interesting that when it turns back on the very people who was all about this in 2020. I love the irony of this right now. I'm not celebrating the fact that, or I'm not excited about someone camped out in front of someone else, because if they have, Mayor Fry has small children, so I'm sure that's scary. I'm not at all
personal
thinking
domain,
that's
right?
great. That's their personal domain. But I think that there is definitely a lesson here in that you have to be really mindful of who you are and what you stand for, and recognize that, wild animals are wild animals. And so I'm not calling people wild animals. What I am saying is that there is a nature. And so if it goes for the goose, it certainly goes for the gander. So we can assemble when we're standing up for social justice, but we can also turn on you as well. And so I would like to get to a point where CD5 isn't, or in other cities across the country, where we're able to just have a sit down and a conversation. Again, protecting the right to assemble, but there's got to be a way that we can sit down and have conversations with people, with the people, with constituents and the leaders and decision makers. We all have to have skin in the game to want change. That's what I would like to see. And that's very possible. it just seems to be an identity and part of CD5's fabric right now, the thing to do, until we have some leaders to step up to say, hey, let's consider and do this a different way.
Yeah, I think you have to put things in context, right? Like when you say that there's this precedent that was already set by a lot of the kind of we'll call it the pro activists, and I say that with air quotes because anybody could be an activist regardless of political belief system.
Yeah.
But there were people that were going and they were protesting in front of Supreme Court justices' houses, and you had plenty of elected officials that were like, "That's perfectly fine, that's cool." And then when you have someone that shows up with a plan to try and assassinate a United States Supreme Court justice, they were quiet. There was crickets. Again, the same thing. You have this person that shows up to Nancy Pelosi's house. I know that there's still a lot of information out there to come out, but my gut intuition is that this sounds like a crazy dude that truly wanted to end the life of the Speaker of the House. And I know, again, that there's a lot of things. I did a TikTok video talking about all of the strangeness that is surrounding that. But again, that there's supposed to be a rule of law. Now, if you've looked at the charges, right, there's been federal charges about something about doing something in the home of an elected official, intimidating them. It's like, oh, so now they're going to selectively decide which laws they're going to enforce. Like, oh, we're going to get you on this charge of going into Nancy Pelosi's house, but if you want to protest outside of a Supreme Court justice's house, that's different. And so I think having these double standards is what is so annoying. I want personally to see civility come back, but we also, that question that, one of our followers asked is about accountability. It's that same point that you bring back to it, is that we have to have accountability, so we can't apply different rules for different groups of people.
Yeah.
And I hope we can get to a point where everyone applies it across the board and says we should not go to the homes of elected officials. There's a place, there's plenty of opportunity of having exercising your First Amendment right without going to their homes. Leave the homes alone.
Well, the mayor, I mean, he has a busy public schedule. If you want to protest the mayor, you go to one of his events. You don't go and sit outside of his house where he has a family. That is not appropriate, and it shouldn't be acceptable whether it's a judge or the mayor or the Speaker of the House, regardless of party. In my opinion, that is off limits.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a question that comes from, again, another one of our viewers. What's your viewpoint on the Second Amendment? I know I myself a card-carrying and weapon-carrying exerciser of the Second Amendment. How do you feel about it?
I support that. Yeah. I'm always going back to the Constitution because I so believe in it. So often when you asked about that, it's in relation to crime and gun laws and things like that. And I believe in our Constitution says you have the right to carry. And so I support that. With relation to crime, I think that we need to accept and realize that responsible gun owners aren't the ones responsible for the, right now we're over 70 murders. The widespread, those aren't responsible gun owners that are committing those crimes.
No, they're not.
So if we had stricter laws on those who are,
prohibited persons.
Yeah, giving at least selling illegal guns or making it possible and readily available to have illegal guns. That's something I would consider. But you're right to carry. I'm in support of that. You will not get me to on any amendment go against the Constitution. I just love the document. I love it's a wonderful, beautiful contract, and I simply live by it. So, but. The illegal guns and how they're easily accessible in relation to 70 plus murders in Minneapolis has clearly decimated an entire community. So I'd like to see us be more responsible that way with laws. But you're right to carry. I'm always going to support that. You have the right to protect yourself, your family, and your property.
Let's switch a little bit. I want to touch base with you about what has been the most interesting thing about being a new candidate running for political office? What has surprised you? And Tell me about some of those days where you're like, this is BS.
Yeah. Yes, indeed. Plenty of those. Plenty of great days as well. Surprises. I am surprised that after primary, particularly, that the embrace isn't 100% from the party.
Yeah.
Interesting.
There are many groups of people within the party that are just not for you, and you're thinking, but this is the conservative Republican Party.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I won the primary. I did all the work. I did what was necessary. I did what was required. And so, despite of your, incremental differences, we come together and we support each other and we, ride the glory together, right? And that's not the case. We'll talk about. I can share something from someone that came and visited, but we'll talk about that in a bit. But what's been pleasant is that recognizing of who I'm up against, getting support from someone from Australia,
Yeah.
and that they're watching and they're aware, getting support from someone from London. So how people are paying attention and how they want global change. And so you recognize that, in my opinion, Ilhan Omar isn't just a divisive person, that there's literally danger associated because of the position she has on the Foreign Affairs Committee. I believe that she's made some very deliberate and taken some very deliberate actions, made some very deliberate decisions that have weakened us in the way of our adversaries.
Absolutely.
And so this is dangerous as well. Yeah.
Talking a little bit about the party, touch on who came and visited
Sure.
and what kind of opened your eyes to what they said.
Yeah, so Tulsi Gabbard was here 3 weeks ago, and someone stood up and asked a question of, the gist of the question was, you're now independent, no longer Dem. What's it going to take for you to step into that full conservative Republican, identify that way? And she says, you know what, I'm glad you asked. I'm going to be honest with you. I hope you're ready for the answer. And she said 3 things. Number 1, your party has some work to do. There's way too much infighting within the Republican Party. She said, as Dems, she said, and remember, I'm a former member, I can tell you, the literal conversation, literally, even if we're wrong, we stick together. And God help you if you step outside of those lines, okay? You will be loyal to this party and our decision. We all go together, even if we're wrong. Number 2, your party is terrible. You need to really embrace culture and pop culture. And she didn't mean race. She said, I don't mean race. I mean literally embracing pop culture and using it to your advantage and getting your party ready for the next generation. She said, you are not. And 3, she said, you don't own language. Your party needs to do a better job at owning language. What you do is you take the terms we've created and you knock it, but you don't create your own. So white privilege, intersectionality, lived experience, those kind of terms, those are Dem created. And so we're aware of them and we repeat it. We knock it down, but we repeat it. We don't create our own. She said what you need to do is reject those terms, but then own language yourself. Take control of it. So if you do those 3, she said, then I'm all yours.
What's fascinating about that is I'm going to give you a philosophical kind of breakdown, is that conservatives and people that are conservative brained do not. They have a very what's the best way to say this? Their openness to new experiences is like very, very low. Like most conservatives are not open to new experiences. That's the best way to describe it. Whereas people that are liberal brained tend to be very open to new experiences.
I am so proud of you for saying this right now.
And so that's just kind of the way that the work, that's how brains work. However, conservative from like that technical aspect, I think is shifting because, as you said earlier, and you've said it numerous times, we have to look at a lot of these areas that have not had Republican victories. Is people they don't want the labels of R&D. They want the labels of reality,
Right.
and fictional, utopia, unicorn land. And the people that want reality are very eclectic. So you do have people, the Tulsi Gabbers of the world, that might be open to coming into kind of, we'll call it the reality movement of bringing that openness to it. And I think that has been happening. I think what we've seen is this cultural shift, and we as the Republicans that have been involved, like people like me, okay, I've been involved in the Republican Party for 16 years, we have to embrace that, because there's going to be, like, no knock against, but the old fuddy-duddies that are like, oh, this is weird. I don't, I'm wearing my Nirvana t-shirt, right? Like if I went to a CD convention, people probably look at me a little bit weird, but we've had Ron Paul folks that came in, and they're more open to new experiences. But I agree that this shift has to happen. We have to embrace, because this move of reality versus unicorn land is going to give us a lot of opportunity to embrace culture. Like you said, we can't play on their terms. If they come up with a framework, if we're in the framework, we're already a step behind.
Right.
We have to create our own framework and say, let's bring people over here and let's talk about these. So it's good to hear that Tulsi's talking about that. I myself, even though I'm conservative, I am someone that actually is very open to experience. I have a very eclectic group of people and friends, but I'm probably like the new Republican, even though I've been a Republican for 16 years. So I think it's that advice that Tulsi put out there is powerful. And for you, you have so much potential. I wanted to ask about this, this division that occurs within the GOP ranks. Because we are individualists, it's sometimes hard to get everyone to get their poop in a group. And so for you, have you heard, like, what's the reasons? Like, you don't have to go into specific reasons, but like, why aren't people jumping on board with you, or why weren't they?
Yeah, so some of it is it's identity within the identity.
Sure.
So we have more of the libertarians.
Sure, yeah.
So they have their whole movement.
Yeah. They got
And I
their
think
thing.
Libertarian Party is very disappointed after statewide convention. We don't have to get into it, but what happened there.
Yep.
And then there are those who are very, very traditional. And so when you start creating tents, they believe that, okay, now we're starting to compromise. And
Sure.
we have to hold, so Christianity, for example, and then how do the Christian conservatives deal with the log cabin conservatives? How does that happen? Or how do the Christian conservatives deal with the Somali by way when it comes to religion? Yeah. And so it's hard to they just have that existing circle or that bubble. And so embracing this means I have to compromise on my identity, and I'm just not willing to do that, or I'm really uneasy with it, So those are the things that have been really, really difficult.
Cicely, how do we accelerate that, though? How do we get that where we're not in our own tents, or we're not compromising as far as the Republican Party goes?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that if Somalis are trying to become a part, and they've embraced the Minnesota GOP, right? They're going to, by the way, Somalis are voting with me in this election cycle, everyone. It's been fantastic. We asked them why. Oh, we have shared values by way of family
There you go.
and education. Well, that's something I can work with, right? And so that's what we do. We figure out where we're alike and embrace that versus our differences. And if we simply do that, there are no two people exactly alike, right?
Never.
And so we figure out where are those shared values, and we come together on those issues. Again, when you think about this and keep working this, when you hear rap stars, right? You listen to the music, you're like, well, they're talking about they're talking about capitalism. That's Oh, we can get together on that.
Yeah.
So you know what? Why can't we have someone who sags as let Nook in? Let Nook in if he wants to vote Republican.
Republicans in, right?
Let Nook them in.
No, I
But
think
truly,
that's the most powerful thing that you can express is that we have these values that align, and yes, there's values that aren't going to align. But when we segregate ourselves so small, and we lose focus on the bigger prize, and this is why we lose certain races. So my hope is that when it comes to election day, that people are going to be able to go into that polling location and really look into themselves and say, am I happy with the way that this district is going, with the representation that we have?
Right.
Do I appreciate, the issues that Ilhan has went to bat for me for? And if they say no, that they say, even though I hate the idea of being a Republican, I'm going to vote for Cicely Davis. And that's my hope, is that when people go into that voting booth, that they can make that determination. I wanted to ask, do you have any campaign events coming out? I know we're in the last stretch here. Is there anything that you want people to come out to? Do you need last-minute donations?
How can they help?
Yeah, how can people help you?
So you can go to CicelyDavis.com, CICELY Davis.com. I will, Saturday morning, I will be at the 3rd Precinct. There will be press conference there. So please be there early in the morning. Okay, so that's at 8 a.m. We'll be lining up pretty early there, but that's this coming. And then Sunday is something special. I've been asked not to. Unfortunately, I shouldn't even talk about it since I can't tell you about it. But
follow you
Saturday.
on your social, on your Twitter, on your Facebook. Where just
I'm at Cicely Davis MN on Twitter and Instagram, CicelyDavis.com.
Okay.
Yep.
And then people can find out about this special thing going on.
Yes, you'll hear about it. But we're going all the way till Tuesday, November 8th. I'm in this midterm 2022 election countdown on all the social media right now. So I'll be on tonight to bring you in. I bring my dog in. Most of the time I'm in the house at the end of the day telling everyone, thank you for joining me as we continue in this countdown. So I can't believe it.
Can I say this? I have had you on, now on 2 of my podcasts, and I think this is probably the 3rd or 4th time that I've had a conversation, and I've seen you out on the campaign trail. Can I just say that you are one of the most genuinely happy people that I have ever met in politics? Like, I'm being serious. Like, I'm not trying to dog on any guest that you've ever seen on any of my podcasts, but this woman is like, you have a genuine happiness for life, like, that just always shines through. And so I wanted to just point that out, because it's crazy how
CD5.
you're so optimistic for everything. And I know you're a human being. I'm not trying to say that like you never get sad, but like, you're always just go, go, go. It's awesome.
I threw a fantastic Hallelujah Night event at Shiloh Baptist Church last night. Kids from the neighborhood came through.
I like it, yeah.
Yeah, I hosted it. It was fantastic. But the neighborhood came through. Parents and kids participated. We played musical chairs and bingo, and we colored, and we ate too much candy and cookies, and but it was wonderful. And so,
did you dress up? Did you do anything?
I did not. I tend to steer clear of costumes now. But I had an orange dress on with smiley jack-o'-lanterns on there and things like that. So
awesome.
It was
awesome.
great. Yeah,
I was a cop.
You were a cop.
This all the time?
Yeah. What were you?
I was a 38-year-old, half African, half white, Minnesotan.
Wow.
And
Great.
Been married for 18 years. I don't know why I said 16. 18 years. That's what I went
That
as.
costume sold out.
Yeah, that's what I went
That
as.
sold out. You got the last one. Oh, good for you. You got the last one.
I got the last one.
Good.
I just want to say thank you to everyone that watched the live stream. Hopefully you've went wrong way backwards. There we go. There we go. That's an awesome new neon sign that we have. We
got to clean it up a little bit, but
we got to clean it up for some reason. I wiped it like 50 times and I can't get it completely clean. But yeah, that's our new neon sign. It kind of delayed us getting started because we were having a lot of issues with it, but I was really dead set on doing it. Please make sure that you guys have liked the stream. Even after the live stream is done, make sure to give it a share on your socials. That's the only way to get this message out. I enjoyed so much having you on, Cicely, being able to have some, I think, awesome conversations about the way that you view the world, the way that you want to be able to be a representative of the people, your love of this country, the Constitution. And so if you like this conversation, please make sure to give it a like and a share on your socials. That's what we got for you.
CD5 is overdue for happy.
We're
There you
overdue
go.
for happy.
Overdue for
That's
really
right.
happy.
That's right. And we got an election coming up.
Yeah.
Make a plan to vote.
Make a plan. Grab like literally 10 of your friends. It comes down to getting people out to vote. That's what you have to do. And I'm even going to say I don't care who you vote for. I hope if you're in the 5th Congressional District, you vote for Cicely Davis and Dr. Scott Jensen and all Jim Schultz, all the great Republican candidates we've had on the show. Please do that, but just go and vote and bring like 10 of your friends and vote in person because that's really awesome. It's a great thing to do in the state of Minnesota. That's what we got for you. I'm A.K. Kamara.
And I'm Jai Hansen.
And you've been listening to Black and Blue with A.K. and Officer Jai. See you around.